This is a generational heist for the Colorado Avalanche as they seek the UFA market in the offseason and try to build the most optimal roster that they possibly can heading into the 2026 season so that they can take the championship window that they currently have right now and go try to chase another Stanley Cup championship. And they are trying to do absolutely everything they can to sign the best available UFAs in the league during this offseason, whether that's players that are already on their rosters and that have been playing with the Avs in the past, or exploring the UFA market beyond just the players on the Colorado Avalanche and trying to potentially sign a free agent that's a little bit larger cost and could really help the Avs roster as we look ahead to the next couple seasons where we're in this championship window with the Avs. They have generational talent and some other really strong players on the side, and they're hoping to go chase another Stanley Cup with the talent that they have. We're going to dive into this heist that the Avs are trying to go on, who they're trying to land, and why this particular player is a very strong fit for the Colorado Avalanche. But before we do so, I want to welcome you to Avalanche Digest here from Digest Media. Mark Robinson with you today, breaking down all the latest in Colorado Avalanche news and media. We give you the most consistent and digestible content on the Colorado Avalanche right here on Avs Digest. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you're an Avs fan, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're 8 subscribers away from getting this channel to 100 subscribers. We're a newer channel here on Digest Media, but continuing to try to grow and make this one of the biggest platforms for consuming Colorado Avalanche news. So as I said, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's dive into this generational UFA heist that the Avs are on and why we think that Mitch Marner is one of the best possible UFA targets for the Avs to sign and add to their roster in the next season. Let's take a look at Mitch Marner's stats last season with the Leafs. 81 games played, 27 goals, 75 assists. You've got to be kidding me. 102 points total, 173 shots, 106 giveaways, 56 takeaways, and 18 plus minus at the end of the season. How are you? Safe to say Mitch Marner continues to be a standout player, not just for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but in the entire league. He is such a strong, dynamic, two-way skater. Obviously not only able to generate so much offense with 75 assists and 27 goals, but also just such a strong defensive player. He does so well moving both ways on the ice and has helped the Leafs to do as well as they've done so far in the regular season over the last few years. But the interesting storyline about Mitch Marner is that the Toronto Maple Leafs in general, they are in a dumpster fire of a postseason situation as it is right now. Over the last 4 or 5 seasons minimum, they've been able to make the playoffs, but they have barely been able to make it past the first round. If they make it past the first round, they're never able to make it past the second round. Obviously, their last Stanley Cup championship in 1967, but since then, they have not been able to squeeze their way out of the Eastern Conference first and second rounds. And with players like Mitch Marner and John Tavares' contracts coming up and them switching over to unrestricted free agency, especially with the way that the Game 7 against Florida went yesterday for Toronto, players like Mitch Marner, although growing up in Toronto and having loved being in Toronto, they might want out. And sending him to a place like Colorado may be very strong and beneficial for both parties. So we can talk a little bit now based on his statistics, his UFA hitting in Toronto, and why he might want to leave the Toronto Maple Leafs. What does he bring to the table for Colorado, and why would he be such a strong fit? Mitch Marner is obviously an elite playmaker. He provides a really solid volume of secondary scoring. Over the past 4 seasons, he's had 35, 30, 26, and 27 goals respectively, as you can see on that graphic there on your screen. He's obviously a playmaker. That's what he's able to do. He is an assist player primarily, obviously 75 assists this season. Shows how strong of an offensive playmaker that he is. And in the 2024-25 regular season, he led the Leafs in points and assists and even strength points and power play points. First among Maple Leafs forwards with total time on ice per game and shorthanded time on ice per game. Mitch Marner is all over the place for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and as the Avs look to add depth to their roster, finding somebody like Mitch Marner would add a ton of scoring depth as well as offensive and defensive depth for this Colorado Avalanche roster as far as what he's able to offer in even strength ice time, power play ice time, and penalty kill ice time. He gives a lot of value for all of those different areas for what the Colorado Avalanche are trying to do as far as their offense and defense goes. So Mitch Marner would be a very strong fit for the Colorado Avalanche, finding sort of a way to get him into that first, second, third line area, especially with some of the UFAs on the Colorado Avalanche roster that we may not see around in the next season, which we'll get into that in just a second. A little more on Mitch Marner, 28 years old heading into this season, 2026-2027 season, that is. Primarily plays right wing. It's obviously not uncommon to see some of these strong players get moved around in their positioning on the forward lines when they get traded to other teams. His 2023-24 salary cap hit $10.9 million. So obviously the question would be, can the Avs afford him? He is a little bit more on the expensive side, and having to prioritize signing other strong players in the farther future, such as Cale Makar, would be something to consider as well. But halfway through this NHL season, Mikko Rantanen was obviously the hottest UFA on the market. But then after we saw him get traded from the Avs and then from Carolina to Dallas, Mitch Marner essentially became one of the hottest UFAs on the market. So if the Avs are able to have gotten the haul that they received from trading Mikko Rantanen in Marty Necas and Jack Drury and those draft picks that will help us later down the road, if they're able to snag someone like Mitch Marner, it almost fills that void that everybody's kind of feeling right now in the Avs roster because of the way that the first round went against Dallas and how much Mikko Rantanen played a role in Dallas's strong suits in which they beat Colorado in 7 games. If they're able to grab a player like Mitch Marner, that would be massive for their depth, their scoring, and just their overall strength as a offensive hockey team, that is. Some general keys for the Avalanche this offseason, whether or not that's trying to sign Mitch Marner, but just generally, they have limited cap dollars, and they're trying to spend them as accurately as possible in what we've talked about as this limited championship window. You have amazing talent in Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar, and you're essentially trying to build a very deep roster around those two generationally amazing players, as well as your very strong captain Gabriel Landeskog and all the other assets of this team that have continued to help them be so successful in the last few years. They know the reality all too well, the biggest factor being Gabriel Landeskog's health. About $8.7 million in cap space to address 7-player unrestricted free agents. That includes Jonathan Drouin and Ryan Lindgren and Brock Nelson, which we'll also get into those 2 players in a second. But the biggest key for the Avs in this offseason, keeping in mind whether or not they're going to try to target a high market player such as Mitch Marner, it's figuring out how to use the remainder of your cap to the best possible ability that you can. And there's a little bit of concern, obviously, with Chris MacFarland and Joe Sakic in the roles of GM and assistant GM in that Avs front office because of all the moves that they made at the end of this regular season and where it got them. We weren't even able to get out of the first round of the playoffs. And the person that was essentially the reason that we didn't get out of the playoffs was the player that was traded away by Chris MacFarland and Joe Sakic in arguably one of the biggest trade in over 10 years in the NHL, is what people in the media are saying. Take a look at this graphic here. I know it is kind of hard to read, but we're looking at the UFAs heading into the 2026-2027 season. And those UFAs who are not under contract and available to sign no matter where they want to go are Brock Nelson, Jonathan Drouin, and then at the bottom of your screen there, Jimmy Vesey and Yoel Kiviranta. I'm not too worried about Jimmy Vesey. Yoel Kiviranta had a breakout season. He's definitely had a career year in this last season. He was definitely a little more quiet in the playoffs. But Yoel Kiviranta, interesting conversation topic as to whether or not they would want to keep him around and if they think that he would add a lot of value as far as offense goes for the Colorado Avalanche. We've talked about Brock Nelson a lot on this channel recently. It is highly unlikely that he will re-sign with Colorado. I think speculation says that it's likely he will go to Minnesota, play where he was originally born, where he's from. Jonathan Drouin, another person that we've talked about on this channel a lot. He's an interesting conversation topic where we could potentially sign him at a lower price, and he seems to produce a lot during the regular season on offense, but the question is can he produce in the playoffs, which is essentially what the Avs need in the longer term, looking at some of these free agents that they're trying to lock down, is can he sign with, can he produce within the playoffs? So keeping those free agents in mind and what the Avs are trying to do, let's first just really quickly glance at the Leafs roster, only that top line, and how Mitch Marner contributes and what he's able to do for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So these are their lines as of today, the lines that they were using in the first and second round of the playoffs. Obviously, the first line, Matthew Knies on the left wing, the captain, Austin Matthews, at center, and then Mitch Marner at the right wing. Obviously, William Nylander's seen on that first line every once in a while as well. But Mitch Marner primarily playing first line right wing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so with that in mind, you have to consider and think about how would he fit into the Avs lineup? So let's take a look at their lines. This was as of Game 7 of the first round of the playoffs, where they lost to the Dallas Stars in heartbreaking fashion, as we know. But the question is, where would Mitch Marner fit into these lines, and how would he find himself to be a lot more dynamic of a player? And let's keep in mind some of the UFAs on this roster that we probably will not see again. So let's take a look at the second line, Brock Nelson. We're most likely not going to see him re-sign with the Colorado Avalanche. If you don't have Brock Nelson, you could potentially be putting Mitch Marner on that second line, and you could even play around with having Gabe Landeskog at the center position and having Val Nichushkin at the left wing, Mitch Marner at the right wing, or even Mitch Marner at the left wing and keeping Val Nichushkin on the right wing side. We know that he's a very strong right wing player. Yoel Kiviranta, he potentially will not be re-signing with the Colorado Avalanche. Do you switch Val Nichushkin with where Yoel Kiviranta is right now? Put Val on the third line, see if he can generate some third line offense and add to the scoring depth of the Colorado Avalanche. And then Mitch Marner's on that second line. Obviously, there's still a void of what that two-line center is going to be if Brock Nelson goes away. You could also have the conversation of Marty Necas bumping down to the second line and Mitch Marner playing on the first line, or even keeping that same top line as it is and just finding a way to incorporate Mitch Marner into the second or the third line. But kind of in conclusion, I think that Mitch Marner would be a really strong addition to the Colorado Avalanche. And I know that that's a tall task to try to sign a player like him. He's probably the most sought after UFA right now, and he might be a little out of the price range as far as what the Avs are willing to spend on free agents with what they want to do with their cap space heading into the next season and seasons onward. But if they're able to somehow get him at a price that works for their cap space and what they're willing to spend, I think Mitch Marner would be a phenomenal addition to the scoring depth and just the overall strength of the Colorado Avalanche. And Mitch Marner, on his side of things, he's in a position where he's a point per game player every year, but he is not able to get past the first and the second round of the playoffs. Marner is very hungry to make some noise in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and if you're able to incorporate him into the depth of the Colorado Avalanche, I think it could be a perfect combination of going all the way and trying to get a really deep Stanley Cup run for the Colorado Avalanche.